Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of State of Mind. This will be Part 19, Chapter 14, entitled Trials. After the morning announcement of Aizawa's rational falsehood, saying that everyone would be able to go to the training camp, the class was given a list of things they would need to bring to the camp, and Izuku was ashamed to realize that he had almost none of it. Most of the class had agreed to go to the mall, but it wasn't like Izuku actually had the money for the stuff that they would be needing. His mom sent him enough money to pay bills and survive on, but that was about it. Before he left for the mall with his friends, Izuku approached his guardian about the issue, forcing himself to look at Aizawa and not stare at the ground. "How important are these items that we need?" Izuku managed to say without stuttering. "Will it be all right if I don't have most of them?" Aizawa leveled a knowing gaze at the boy in front of him. "Don't worry about it, problem child. I'll make sure you have everything you need." Izuku's eyes widened, and he took a stumbling step backward. You don't have to do that. It's—" "Kid," Aizawa interrupted. "It's fine. Just text me or Mike when you're done at the mall, and we'll pick you up." Izuku nodded stiffly, and then turned, exiting the room, Aizawa's words echoing in his head. Why was he so nice to him? Izuku had been living with him and Mike since after the USJ, and he still didn't quite understand why they were being so nice to him, why they did so much for him. Shoto was waiting for Izuku when he stepped out of the classroom. "Everyone is changing out of their uniforms. Did you remember to bring spare clothes?" he asked. Izuku nodded. That had been Ida's suggestion, to try to prevent them from being recognized as UA students, what with the hype surrounding all of them after the sports festival. Izuku changed as quickly as possible, feeling bad for making the class wait for him, and then rushed out to stand next to Shoto. "You have a strange sense of fashion," his friend said, while taking in his galaxy-themed leggings, blue shorts, and favorite black long-sleeve shirt with the skeleton astronaut on it. "Thank you." Izuku smiled at Shoto, who quickly looked away, blinking. "All right, let's go, everyone, so that we can leave the mall before it's dark. Even though tomorrow is Saturday, you should not stay out too long," Ida shouted, and Izuku shook his head at the class rep's antics. Ida never changed. They all made their way to the mall together, almost the entire class together outside of school for the first time, and Izuku was surprised by how friendly they all were with each other, as if they had known each other their entire lives. Ashido shoved Yayorozu playfully against the side of the train that they were riding in, laughing. Oshiro and Hagakure appeared to be bickering amicably about something, while Jiro teased Kaminari about his quirk as he smiled, pretending to be offended. Ida was going around, apparently adding everyone to the group chat that they had started. Everyone was happy, content with each other, and Izuku had never seen anything like it, had never even hung out with people that actually considered him their friend. Izuku turned his head to see Shoto watching their classmates with equal amounts of awe and confusion. "Is this how people usually act?" the boy asked softly. Izuku swallowed. "I don't know. I've never—" He didn't quite know how to describe what he was thinking, but Shoto seemed to understand. "Yeah," he said. "They're just so happy." Izuku nodded. "Uh-huh." He leaned back in his seat. "I've never even been to a mall before, you know." Shoto shook his head. "I haven't either." "I'm actually kind of nervous," Izuku admitted. Shoto met his eyes, and Izuku watched the aura swirling around the boy in new, more vibrant colors. "Me too," he murmured. "This is our stop," Ida yelled suddenly, and the moment was broken, Izuku's head snapping up. Shoto sighed and then stood, filing off the train with everyone else and then walking to the mall in a clump of teenagers. They approached the side of the massive mall, but Izuku was not looking at it as Shoto had expected him, instead watching up at the hues and colors of the brilliant sky. "Izuku?" Shoto asked, voicing his concern and confusion for the green-haired boy. "This is my favorite time of day," Izuku whispered in explanation. "The hour or so when the horizon is painted with the colors of twilight, and the air smells like the nighttime, but the ground is still warm from the day's sunlight." Shoto almost tripped over his foot at the words, despite generally not being a clumsy person. He had never realized that Izuku had such a poetic voice. He looked down at the boy at his side, his emerald eyes pointed up at the sky, a soft expression on his features, framed by the long hair on the left side of his face. Shoto could hear his heart pounding in his ears, so he cleared his throat, trying to focus on the mall as they approached it. Izuku glanced up at him, a blush creeping up his neck. Sorry, he whispered, embarrassed. Shoto wanted to tell him not to be sorry. Definitely do not be sorry, but Ashido's voice interrupted him. And so here we are, with the most stores in the prefecture, the newest and coolest, most advanced Kiyoshi Ward shopping mall. Izuku's grip tightened on the straps of his backpack as they walked into the crowd, which was still large despite it being the evening. Are you all right? Shoto asked him. Mm-hmm, Izuku answered, brows drawn close to his eyes. I'm okay. Large amounts of people, especially strangers, just makes me anxious. Shoto scooted a bit closer to the smaller boy, and Izuku looked up at him gratefully as the rest of the class began to break up into groups depending on what they were looking for. It only took a minute for everyone else to disappear, leaving Shoto and Izuku alone. Wow, everyone's so fast, he muttered. Shoto hummed a noise of agreement. Is there anything you need? Izuku shook his head. No, let's just wander. I don't know where anything is or what malls are supposed to offer, really. Shoto nodded, and they set off, just enjoying each other's presence and taking everything in. The mall really was quite large and, as they learned, seemed to offer anything they could possibly think of. It didn't take long for Izuku to begin feeling overwhelmed, though, and he changed direction, heading to the food court, where he saw various places he could sit for a minute. You're hungry? Shoto asked, confused. Izuku didn't say anything, not trusting his voice. He moved toward an empty bench, removing his backpack and setting it aside before practically falling onto the bench with a sigh, his hand rubbing his chest, where his heart was. Izuku? Shoto was frowning. Izuku looked up, offering a hopefully reassuring smile. Sorry, it's all just a bit much, he explained weakly, gesturing around them. Shoto nodded in understanding, and then looked around. They were surrounded by several restaurants and vendors, all had long lines, but Shoto was willing to queue for Izuku. I'll get you something to drink. He straightened. You don't have to do that. Izuku shook his head, tense. I want to, Shoto said before turning around and disappearing into the throngs of people. Izuku sighed, wrinkling his nose. He was so weak. It was just people, for goodness sake. It's not like there was any actual danger here. Izuku was fine. Suddenly, someone in a black hoodie dropped into the seat next to Izuku, swinging an arm around his shoulders. Izuku froze, every muscle in his body tensing. Oh, it's someone from UA. Cool. Let me have your autograph. Izuku's mind stalled. What did he do? How should he react? How did he get this person to leave without being rude? Gods, what the fuck should he do? Izuku stuttered. What did one say in a situation like this? Did he just agree? Would the man leave if Izuku did what he asked? And weren't you one of the guys who ran into the hero killer in the Hosu incident? That's so cool. The man's arm tightened around Izuku's shoulders, and he struggled to control his breathing. It would be a bad idea to hyperventilate with a stranger hanging on to him. Man, I seriously can't believe it. The man went on despite Izuku's obvious discomfort. I can't believe I'd see you again in a place like this. Izuku's breath halted and his eyes widened. Again. The word resounding in his head like the beat of a drum. It makes me feel like there's something to it. The man's hand came up, 3 of his fingers settling against the skin of his neck, pushing into his throat. Something like fate or destiny. Izuku craned his eyes up, seeing greasy white hair and pale skin. Handyman. But, well, from your perspective, I guess we haven't met since the attack on UA, huh? Izuku was absolutely frozen in fear, the image of Aizawa's elbow crumbling into dust, flashing through his mind over and over again. Shigaraki's quirk was activated by touch just like his. 5 points of contact. If he lowered that one finger, Izuku's throat would disintegrate, just like Aizawa's elbow. Don't make a fuss, okay? Just act naturally. Handyman commanded, his voice flat and smooth. I just want to talk. Just try and do something funny. His last finger hovered over Izuku's neck dangerously. You don't want what happened to your hand to happen to your throat, do you? Izuku's hand twinged with phantom pain where his finger should be, at the reminder, and he grimaced. People would catch you, Izuku gasped out, stalling, struggling to think. What could Izuku do? Did Shigaraki know about his quirk? He had seen what he'd done with the Nomu, and he had implied that he had been there during the fight with Stain, but did he know that Izuku had used his right hand? But Izuku didn't think that he was quick enough to grab him before he crumbled his throat, and where could Izuku even grab him? He was fully dressed, barely any skin showing. Izuku tried to focus, to control his breathing. The villain was talking again while Izuku carefully, and oh so slowly, removed one of his gloves. Look at these people, he spat, gesturing to all the people happily enjoying their evening around them, oblivious to the villain in their midst. Even though anyone could wield their quirk at any time, how can they smile and gather like that? When it comes down to it, laws and rules assume that people have morals. They're convinced that there's no way anyone would do it. He grinned maliciously, leaning in close to Izuku's face. Before I'm caught, I could turn at least 30 people to dust. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. What could he do? Gods, he was panicking, his breath picking up despite him trying to force it to be even, his heart trying to pound out of his chest. The weight of all these people's lives was riding on Izuku's every move, and, Izuku realized he was not ready to be a hero. Calm down. Shigaraki's voice was a hushed snarl. I hate you. I hate everything. But what pisses me off the most is the hero killer. He's not with you. Izuku swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing beneath the hand around his throat. That's the problem, Shigaraki growled. Almost everyone is looking at the hero killer. No one cares about what I did, about the Nomus and the fire. Everything was upstaged by him. No one's looking at me. Why is that? The handyman leaned even closer, and Izuku's skin crawled. What is the difference between me and him, Midoriya? I don't agree with either of you, Izuku rasped, blinking tears away from his eyes, his palms sweating buckets against his thighs. But I understand the hero killer. He had a goal. He wanted a just society. He wasn't just mindlessly killing because he wanted to. The hand tightened the smallest bit. Oh, the villain breathed. I feel like I've connected the dots. Why the hero killer pisses me off so much and why you irritate me. Everything's because of All Might. Yagi? What? No. Shigaraki grinned down at Izuku and his gut twisted. Shigaraki looked like a jack-o'-lantern. I get it now. The handyman suddenly leaned back. What was I so worried about? These guys are able to smile thoughtlessly because All Might is smiling thoughtlessly. The hand tightened further, and no, Izuku couldn't take it. He was young again. Hisashi's hand slamming his body against the wall by his throat, choking him until his vision blacked out. Izuku's hand shot up as Shigaraki's finger instinctively lowered on Izuku's throat, the skin immediately beginning to crumble away. Izuku slapped the villain's face with a resounding crack, and Shigaraki was teleported away, leaving behind the smell of ozone and the echoes of the loud, ripping sound Izuku associated with his quirk. Izuku folded in half, his hands coming up to grip his throat as blood trickled between his fingers. What should he do? Just how much damage could a quirk like Shigaraki's do to his mind? It would be nothing like the Nomu when the pain hit. Shigaraki could literally crumble him away from the inside. Izuku? Izuku's head shot up. Shoto stood before him, frowning in confusion, a plastic cup in each hand. Call the police, Izuku choked out, removing one hand to tap his head. Shigaraki. Shoto gasped and then nodded, not hesitating as he set the cups on the bench where the handyman had been and withdrew his phone from his pocket, dialing something and holding it up to his ear. Yes, I need emergency services at Kiyoshi Ward Shopping Mall now. My friend is the leader of the League of Villains captured, but... That was when Izuku was slammed with the pain. The rest of Shoto's words drowned out by the onslaught. His body gave out and he slid off the bench and onto his knees. His teeth grinded against each other, and the hand not clutching his throat reached up to yank at his hair. Blood gushed from Izuku's nose and over his lips like a waterfall. Shoto was suddenly in front of him, grabbing his shoulder with one hand, the other still holding his phone to his ear. "Izuku!" Shoto yelled. "Fuck!" Izuku had never heard the boy sound so loud, let alone curse. "Izuku, you've got to release him. He's going to kill you." Izuku shook his head rapidly and tried to explain that if he did, Shigaraki would kill everyone nearby, but all that came out was a twisted sound. Shoto shouted at all the people gathering around them, telling them to move. Izuku wasn't breathing. He couldn't even think enough to remember to do that. The pain had his vision almost completely blacked out, and Izuku couldn't even feel his injured throat anymore. He could feel the blood pouring from his nose like a faucet, draining down the back of his throat, coating his tongue with the taste of hot iron. "Izuku! Izuku!" Shoto was on his knees in front of him. "There's a cop that was nearby. He's lined up. He's here. He's going to hit him with quirk suppressants as soon as you let him out, and the civilians are far enough back. Do it, Izuku, please." Izuku nodded shakily, deciding to trust Shoto. He was going to die if he didn't. Izuku could feel it, and he didn't want that again. He couldn't do that again. Izuku lifted his hand and felt Shoto's grip encircle his wrist, guiding his arm to where the best place would be to put the villain. "Okay, Izuku, do it now." And Izuku did, releasing his quirk. He immediately fell into Shoto, the boy's arms wrapping around him as Izuku's head landed on his chest. "Izuku, breathe. You need to breathe." Shoto's voice was in his ear. Izuku sucked in air at the reminder, his hands hanging off to the side, curled into weak fists against the ground, one gloved and one not. "It's okay now, Izuku. The cop knocked him out. You're safe." Izuku realized Shoto's hand was running through his hair, tugging at his scalp. Shoto," Izuku gagged, choking on the blood draining down his sinuses. Izuku was leaning on Shoto's right side, and it was cool and comforting. "It's okay. It's okay." Shoto was trembling, his voice shaking as he held Izuku close to him. Izuku slumped even further against the boy, his eyes closed. He was shaking too, violent shivers racking his body that he couldn't control. Shoto was struggling to help, having found Izuku's glove and was trying to slip it back on without activating his quirk. "The paramedics will be here any minute," he said. "Just try to stay awake, please, Izuku." "I didn't know what to do." Izuku coughed again, barely comprehending Shoto's words. His nose was still streaming with blood, and he was sure it was getting all over Shoto's shirt. His head felt like it was currently in the process of exploding. "You did so well, Izuku," Shoto murmured. His voice was by Izuku's ear. "He was disintegrating my mind," Izuku gasped out, nuzzling his face closer into Shoto's chest. "I could feel it." "Izuku, the paramedics are almost here. I'm going to let them take you, okay?" Shoto said, and Izuku moaned. He didn't want anyone else near him. He didn't trust them. He didn't want to leave Shoto. He trusted Shoto like he had never trusted anyone before, and he had no idea when that had happened, but it didn't matter. Someone pulled on Izuku, and he couldn't fight it. They could be a villain for all he knew, but he couldn't do a thing. His hand lifted, searching for Shoto as he was lifted and then laid down on something. His fingers found his friend's distantly cold hand, and he grabbed it. "Please, don't leave me," he choked out, trying to see. Shoto's hand closed around his, a grounding comfort. Someone tried to tug him away, but his grip tightened, and he growled through his teeth. "Fine, you can come. Just keep up, kid," a voice said, and Shoto's hand squeezed his. Izuku relaxed slightly, leaning his head back. This didn't feel as bad as the Nomu. His head hurt. His throat hurt again, too, but he wasn't dead. He wasn't dead. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 14 of State of Mind. The second half to this chapter will be up next. I love the fact, personally, that Shoto is involved in the mall incident this time, and we're actually getting some genuine, strong emotions out of Todoroki in this one, so drop those comments below. Let me know what you all thought about this chapter, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.